Hi, I'm here with Kristina Wischnowsky. Hey, Kristina.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Really well, really well. It's kind of rhetorical in this time of COVID lockdown, eh? When we say, "How are you?" So
Yeah,
I can imagine different people are taking this whole experience in very different ways across New Zealand and the world.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely you have to be willing to get a real answer, right? Like that, and also be vulnerable with your answer too, in terms of if you're not okay, then that's okay, and to be really honest about that and to reach out and get support. But um, so often we just say, "How are you?" and it's just we're not even really interested, are we, in, in what the other person has to say. So yeah. How are you as we keep walking? We don't even
Yeah.
stop.
So we're just here today exploring health and wellness in this
Mm.
series of interviews in COVID lockdown, Kristina. And knowing you as I do, I'm very curious to know what your take is on this whole concept of wellness today.
Mm. Good question. For me, my take on wellness today, I think I've always had the philosophy that wellness is a preventative strategy, right? So it's actually making sure that we do the things when we are feeling okay and being okay so that we can feel and be okay over the long term. Um, I've always seen wellness as like Stephen Covey, right? When he says, imagine your life at the end of your life, like what is it that you want to have left behind? And I know yoga teachers who are still teaching yoga and doing the splits at 84, and I look at them and I'm like, yeah, girlfriend, that's going to be me. So, and another, I'm halfway there, but it's like that process of then, if that's how I want to be when I'm 84, what are the habits and the activities and the food and the thoughts that I need to be nourishing now so that I can live that quality of life in 40 years' time. So being really clear about what I eat, what I drink, how I sleep for that long-term goal. Yeah. So it's prevention versus cure.
Yeah. Checking out the dictionary definition before I started these interview series, there's a multifunctional componentry of wellness, according to the Oxford English Dictionary anyway. And I'm curious with yourself, your experience in yoga and meditation and your
Mm,
journey through discovery and self-discovery in that space, and you now being a teacher of yoga.
mm.
So yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I guess like from a perspective, like yoga, I think is an overarching philosophy because most Westerners we look at yoga and it's asana, right? Which means the postures. So we go to a class, we get a workout, and then we leave again. And sometimes, if we're lucky, the yoga teacher puts a 5-minute meditation in somewhere along the lines or does some breathing activity with us. But as an overarching philosophy, yoga is a practice of wellness. And it's a practice of long-term vitality and well-being, and be, we come at that because there's actually 8 limbs to yoga. So the asana is one of the 8 limbs, and then we have a whole lot of other practices and rituals, like you said, self-study. So looking at who am I as a person, how do I react in this moment, what are the thoughts that I'm having, how am I creating the thoughts that I want to be having to really nourish who I am as a human being. Um, Practices around keeping the body clean and pure. So that, for Westerners are quite left field in terms of tongue scraping or neti potting, taking a lot, like monitoring the food that we eat, knowing what we call our dosha, which is the type of constitution we have, so that we eat properly and we exercise properly to really stay balanced and in tune with who we are and in the natural cycles and rhythms of earth. So I think from a yoga perspective, if you really go beyond the physical practice and step into the other 8 limbs, which includes meditation, it includes exploring spirituality, looking after your body, looking after your mind, um, it's really all about being vibrant and well. Yeah.
And what was your entry point into the world of yoga? What prompted that?
Being really sick. To be frank, I got glandular fever at 23, and I'm like a very kind of high energy person, so I was like, glandular fever is not going to stop me. Anyway, it did for a long time. So I went to an acupuncturist who was also a yoga teacher, and she started teaching me the broader philosophy of yoga in terms of changing my diet, meditating, and then she said I really needed to start practicing yoga, and that was it. There was no turning back.
Wow.
And the person I was at 23, which was 20 odd years ago, I'm more vibrant and alive and energetic and stronger and everything now than I was in my 20s.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's because of yoga.
And in sense of tutelage or learnings in yoga, your trainings,
Mm.
are you aligned to any particular philosophy of practice?
Yes, I am. Like there's so many schools of yoga, and they're all beautiful and they're all great, and you get so much from whichever school you dive into. The school of yoga that I fell in love with and became a real student of is called Anusara, and that Anusara means stepping into the flows of grace. And what I really loved about Anusara was that the three overarching philosophies, so they taught the same philosophy or principles as all yoga schools teach the same things, right? But you can't, if you go to do Trikonasana, it's Trikonasana everywhere. You learn the sutras, you learn Bhagavad Gita, like it's all the same. But Anusara focused on three things, which I really loved, which is universal principles of alignment. So making sure that you're safe when you're practicing yoga and you're not going to injure your body, and you can do it till you're 84 physically. Blatantly a spiritual practice. So when I teach yoga, I teach to a spiritual theme, and I'm teaching a spiritual concept in yoga, which I really, really love. And then the third one is it's all about community. So it built a really beautiful cooler. So that's the school of yoga that I've come from and am still committed to.
And daily ritualistic practice for you with yoga?
I meditate twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. I practice yoga every day. I get out for a walk in nature every day, or a bike ride. I started bike riding, which is interesting because it's really changed my hamstrings. So now when I teach hamstring opening classes, I'm like, oh wow, I get what the students used to say about like this isn't fun. I do a lot of the purity practices, so in terms of tongue scraping, etc. Reading, journaling. I keep a gratitude diary, which isn't naturally a yoga practice, but I kind of feel like it lines up with that. Self-study, so I do a lot of reflection, like how could I have been better today? Because there's always opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
And service. I think that's probably the biggest thing for me, is really how can I be of service to others.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And if we think of the COVID situation globally, it's a massive time in the humanity of transformation, isn't it? And you yourself being a coach, working in organizations, and getting on the front foot to embrace and take advantage of transformation opportunities. How are you seeing the post-COVID environment in NZ potentially in affecting business, or how corporates manage health and well-being and that kind of thing? How are you, no crystal ball, but what do you see out there?
Yeah, I see I saw that it was happening already, right? So, you're right. I work in organisations as a consultant, and I work in the people space, and in particular health and well-being space. And what I was noticing in the last decade is that organisations were beginning to understand their responsibility for looking after the health and well-being of their people. And some were doing it better than others, but I think that there was a real intention to be doing it really well. I also think that post-COVID, what I'm seeing right now inside of COVID is that organizations are really understanding that they have a responsibility to care about their people. What I'm loving about this COVID experience is that we're seeing the whole world come together willingly, stay inside to protect our vulnerable peers. Like, talk about an act of love. Talk about an act of grace. Like, we are willing to give up our freedom to look after the most vulnerable people around us, which says that there's a huge transformation happening on the planet, led by all of, our leaders. Some of them got on board a little bit slower than others, but they got there. You have to bow to the peer pressure at some point. So organizations are going to take that responsibility for looking after their staff to the next level, and making sure that the mental well-being, the physical well-being, this, I don't know about spiritual well-being. Like, for me, like, I can't. It's hard for me to divorce that, but who knows? Who knows? Like, and I'm not talking about any religious connection or anything when I say that, but it's actually, I expect that this act of service and this act of love that the world stepped into right now will continue post-COVID. And I think organizations will reshape the way that they operate, to be more mindful of the impact on the environment. Because look at what we're seeing from us giving the world a break. She doesn't take long to come back, does she, Mother Nature? She's quite resilient.
I'd be fascinated to understand Sir David Attenborough's, thoughts on this situation, because he's 94 years old, and he's had a lot of exposure in the last few years in his 90s around, we've got one chance here. And I agree with you. I was thinking about that today, in sense of pollution and travel and, airlines, less kerosene and, greenhouse gases. So there's bound to be positive effects environmentally, and also how we relate to each other. Because as you said at the start of that question, it's a massive leveler, isn't it? It's a universal leveler, this, across, whether you're in Milan or New York or London, Bluff. I mean, there's been a fatality in Bluff, and who would have thought?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a massive leveler. And I was speaking to my father this morning, who said, you can think that you're fit, you can think that you're strong, you can think that you're well, but at the end of the day, like, you can be easily taken out by this thing, and we're all equal, like, and I think when you come back to we're all one and we're all connected and we're all equal, which some of the philosophies that I follow through the yoga practice and life, then experiences like this really prove it, right? Because it doesn't discriminate.
Yeah. Do you think, Kristina, there'll be less overt profit focus as a side effect on business and culture to true investment in health and well-being? Because as you say, what I've seen is there's some do walk their talk, others it's just talk. Do you think there'll be more sincere investment in the people across sort of corporate culture, perhaps across NZ and the Western world?
I hope so. I mean, like, Chris, in the 20 years that I've been doing this people consulting, the one thing that I know is true is that organizations who invest in their people and create wonderful team dynamics, and when I talk about wonderful team dynamics, they are based on service, they are based on love, they are based on really clear achievement focused team affiliation, great feedback cultures, etc. Like when we create that, we actually get good profit and productivity anyway. So it's almost like if you profitability comes from creating a great team and creating a great culture. So if leaders around the world want to learn anything from this, and they want to rebuild their business, and they want to be able to come out stronger, then this is their opportunity to look at, well, how do I invest in my people? Because my people are the thing that make my business. And actually the people are the thing that make this world and this planet. And I used to travel a lot for my work, right? And it's a long day, or it's a long couple of days, because you wake up early in the morning, you're away from the family, you get home late at night. Like if it's a one-day trip, you're normally on the plane at 6 in the morning and on the last plane out at 9:30 in the evening. Yeah, and that's a big commitment. So we're not only impacting the environment, we're impacting the individual, and we're impacting the family. Now we know that we can do Zoom, we can do Teams, we can do a whole lot of other things, which means that I don't need to have that cost. And it's not just the direct cost of the flights, there's all the other costs associated with that, but I can still have a productive team that achieves the same results. So I think business are now understanding that, and there'll be hopefully a whole lot more investment in trusting their people, knowing that when people work from home, they actually do work from home. And if they don't, then you manage them, right? So
Yeah. So say if I came to you, Kristina, and I say I had a business of 400 or 500 people across maybe 2 or 3 centers in NZ, and I'd given health and well-being lip service and had been in the marketing, but really we just sort of skated on the surface. And I had sincere intentions of developing and designing a health and well-being program for my employees. Where would you ordinarily start with myself in a situation like that?
Well, I would start with having a really honest conversation with you about, okay, so what's changed? What do you really want? What do you think you're going to get out of this? What is the strategy for your business? So really understanding the vision and why you're making this shift. And then also understanding how coachable you are, because the truth of the matter is that the success of any health and wellbeing program depends on you as the leader, really believing in it and backing it and standing behind it. Then from there, once we'd kind of agreed that you're on board, and we would look at the next layer down, are they on board? But obviously they've got no choice because you are now. And then we go to actually understanding what's happening in your organization right now. So we get really honest, and this is the practice of yoga, this is the practice of personal transformation. It's the same practice within an organization. Is let's do the shadow work, right? Let's see what darkness is inside this organization that we can't deny anymore, and we actually have to front foot and face. So if you want to have a really great business as a leader, you have to be willing to get really vulnerable and get the truth and hear the truth and believe it. And so that's where generally it's a survey, and then either face-to-face interviews. Probably with 500 staff, it wouldn't be with all of them, it would be a random selection, and then the leadership team would get that report back.
Yeah, awesome.
And that turns into an action plan, and it takes about 3 years to transform the culture of an organization. A committed organization, maybe a little bit sooner.
Yeah. And who or what were your key influences into your line of work? I know you studied psychology, and you've studied a number of times in your career. Are there any particular inspirational individuals or thinkers that you really studied and admired and modeled yourself against?
Oh, where do I begin? I think this is the thing, right? Is we always need to be looking to a role model, and we always need to be looking towards a coach. And seriously, there are so many people in this world who can show you how to do things better. You just have to be willing to listen. So when I first started I really love the work of Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I still use that today, and it blows my mind. Like, that book has been around for how long, and there's still people who don't know what their habits are, and they're in business running business. And there's, that's not a judgment. It's just there's certain things that as business leaders, they're recommended required reading, and not just reading, but then you actually have to read the book and put it in place. Like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Do the work. The first chapter says start out as you wish to end, or however, like the first principle. And he says, write your eulogy. Write your darn eulogy and review it every 5 years, So Stephen Covey was a really big influence. I think I read that book more than 20 times in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I really have been inspired by a woman, Marianne Williamson, who is a spiritual teacher in something called the Course in Miracles. She's actually for the Democratic presidential elect at the moment over in America. So she's stepped out of spiritual teaching she's taken this, so she started as a spiritual teacher transforming individuals to then transforming groups, to now she wants to hopefully transform America, but I'm not sure that they're ready for that, but at least she's putting herself out there. And because of her, I am a student of the Course in Miracles, which is a wonderful kind of tool for learning how to really challenge the way that you see the world and see yourself, etc. Oprah Winfrey. Man, that woman's phenomenal, hey?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Tony Robbins. They're probably the kind of top guiders from a big picture, worldwide perspective. On a day-to-day basis, I think every boss I've had has taught me something about how to be really good in business. I'm really grateful for a time that I spent in a company called PPR, Professional Public Relations. They taught me really a lot. Robert Kirby, core energetics, body psychotherapy, School of Body Psychotherapy, like a lot of people.
And when it comes to your own personal transformation, Kristina, was there a point in your life perhaps where you resisted change, or you denied it, or you talked against it, and you sort of resisted for your own personal development, putting the needle through the balloon of your own growth? And if you did, what did you learn on the other side of the balloon once you pivoted and gone through that transformation?
You know what? I think that every time we kind of hit a growth point in life, there's that process of grief, where it's denial and blame and avoiding seeing my part in the picture, which what I really learned when I was studying the body psychotherapy was you need to take your 50%. So in any kind of dynamic, when you're trying to point the finger, and my mum always said this too, there's more fingers pointing back at you. I was like, no, there's a huge resistance, because we love to stay safe. And we love to stay in this known ground, and we love to kind of, our ego does a really good job of keeping us small, right? And the point is that we need to, so there's always resistance. Every step of the way, there's resistance. Even yesterday, I was facing my own resistance on a growth point, right? So it doesn't matter how much we grow, there's always another step, and there's always going to be resistance there. But what I think I learned really early on was that after moving through and pushing through and willing to sit with and surrender and look in the mirror and all of that stuff, after that, and once it's integrated, there's a release of energy inside the system, and then a return to a little bit more wholeness, and then a bit more joy and a bit more peace and a bit more love, so it's worth it. And then so at the beginning there was way more resistance when I would come to things, and now there's like, oh, I see the resistance, I feel it, I know it's going to take a while to work through it, but I kind of almost run at it, if that makes sense now, because it just makes life so much better on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In the last 12 months, I've been lucky enough to do some of the Brené Brown trainings,
Oh yeah.
and also Landmark Forum. And
Yeah.
Landmark Forum was probably the most intense personal development. But a lot of cues you see similar, like Brené will say, in the arena, you got to be on stage. And, Landmark have got a different terminology of playing the game of change yourself in your own mind and brain prior to looking to influence others around you.
Yes.
And as you say, it's taking that bullet and taking the hill for your own self, for your own personal transformation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. My wife showed me a photograph of some global leaders today, and there was 8 leaders, and they were leading the effectiveness of the COVID campaigning within their countries. And there was one common factor amongst these 8 figures who were performing the highest, and in sense of strong leadership, in sense of control of the virus, in sense of tough decisions. I think you probably know what they had in common, eh?
Let me guess, were they all women?
So my question for you, Kristina, is around leadership and the senses that we have as males and females, and the sense how we're built. Why do you think this is the case, that the global leaders, the female women leaders, are sort of top of the tree at the moment in sense of combating this virus?
Well, I think, I don't know, I have seen that picture. I think also too, most of the countries that they're ruling are more on the, and I'm going to use the word socialist, but not in the, because I know, in a country like America, that's like a bad word. But yet, in terms of actually, these are countries that innately also have a propensity towards looking after people. So I think if you look at it, was like Iceland and Denmark and Sweden and New Zealand, and if you look at those countries, they're all countries that have innately and built in the culture of that country looking after people. So I think there's the female leadership, and then there's actually the culture of the country and the community around it. And the leadership, just like in an organization, come together to effectively create the outcomes, right? So you need strong leadership to have a strong culture, but the culture is already embedded in terms of this proclivity to looking after the weak and the vulnerable and the people. In America, it's like, oh, if you don't have a job, tough titties, there's no support for you. Whereas in New Zealand and the other countries that are shown in that picture, there's a huge level of income support and social welfare and systems in place to keep the individual okay. We've got free healthcare, etc., etc. So there's probably 2 factors there. I don't think it matters whether you're a woman or man in terms of being a great leader. I think it matters the level of service that you are coming at your role in. So the leadership really is about service, right? So when I'm leading a team of people, I'm serving them to become the best that they can be. I'm helping them step into their own light and their own greatness. That's my job, right? I share the vision. I get them involved in the vision. I get them caught up in this dream of where we're going. And then they come with me, but they come in their own authentic, unique way. And if you look at Jacinda, right, and the way that she's leading New Zealand through COVID-19, if you look at Jacinda and the way she's led New Zealand since she stepped onto the Prime Minister's role, she's authentically Jacinda. There's no airs, there's no graces, there's no ego, there's nothing. She is just standing up in service of her nation. She's standing up in the values that she believes in, and she stands strong in those. If you compare her to, just pick a male leader that might not be doing very well right now. Right?
Can I say Mr. Morrison?
So just choose one, right? Then are they like, leadership means you know what your values are and you stand strong in them, and you're decisive because of those values, right? And I'm not saying that the male leaders aren't standing strong in their values, because they probably are, but then you need to question their values in terms of, do my values line up with their values? And I think most of us would say potentially not right now, no. Like, yes, we all need jobs and we all need a strong economy and all of that stuff, but I think that we can rethink how we achieve that. Yeah.
Do you think there's an irony with Jacinda and her persona of, authenticity and courage, that if we look at, say, corporate leadership in NZ, the fraction of leaders in the female is very low, maybe 5 or 10%.
Yeah, really low. Yeah.
Really low, like embarrassingly low.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for silver linings here to come out of any transformational crisis. Do you think the business sector can look at Jacinda in their leadership transformation modeling, in their training, in how they develop, future leaders for the next 10 or 20 years?
Yeah. I think that the corporate world has been looking at how they can transform the role of leadership for more than 10, for the last 25 years. I follow a system called human synergistics. And human synergistics 30 years ago, they've got like blue, green, and red. I won't go into it, but basically red is aggressive, defensive, green is passive, defensive, and then blue is constructive or building behaviors. So, when they first started about 30, 40 years ago, red behaviors were correlated with organizational effectiveness, as were the blue behaviors. Green's never been correlated with organizational effectiveness. Now, women started entering the workforce in the 80s, right? So, and started kind of moving up the ladder. And red behaviors now are not correlated with organizational effectiveness. It's actually correlated with ineffectiveness, just like the green. So the blue behaviors, which I spoke about before, which are achievement oriented, self-actualizing, which is helping people step into the best version of themselves, humanistic, encouraging, giving people great feedback to support them on their journey, and then creating great relationships and teams, is the definition of a great leader. And I don't think you need to be male or female, and I hope one day we get beyond the gender thing, but right now we're still stuck in it, right? Because when I walk into a room, the first thing people see is a woman. When you walk into a room, the first thing people see is a man, and then a whole lot of stereotype comes with that. That we haven't overcome. And there's a whole lot of bias, even women against other women. There's a whole lot of bias against that too. So yes, I think that corporates were already moving in that direction. I hope that they learn some lessons and they move further in that direction. But we've got to break down a whole lot of paradigms around and biases. Still, there's a journey to go,
Yeah. I was watching a Simon Sinek yesterday on leadership, but also on agility to move into the next era and not holding on to the past.
Yeah.
With protectionism, or that's how it worked. And maybe that in NZ is something, the sort of pale male grey bastionism. We need to move forward into the future.
Yeah.
And not look at, preserving what it could be historical or antiquated. Going back to my business, if I'm running a business of 400 or 500 people, and I said to you, Kristina, I'd love you to coach me through this. What can I expect from you as my coach?
Honesty, challenge, cheerleading, love, and friendship.
Wow. When do we start?
Well, we'd have to have a real, like, with it. First, we have to have this really close, like, honest conversation, right? It's interesting though, because like, even like, there's some organizations, I was just talking about this the other day, there's some organizations that we've started the process with, and you go in, do the first phase, and you think, oh, they're a little bit resistant, but we'll see what comes from this. Then we do the interviewing the staff phase, and it's not good. And the fact of the matter is, mostly organizations like this, I can't wait for the day that the organization that's performing okay rings me, because that organization is going to go from good to great, just like Tom Peters said. But what happens is that most organizations go from broken to good. And then we have to get them from good to great. And that's a sign of good leadership. If you're asking for help when things are good, your business is going to be thriving through any circumstance. But anyway, so we went through this process, and yeah, so the feedback wasn't great. The feedback was pretty bad. But the leaders said, we're not the problem, our team is.
What a surprise.
Yeah, what a surprise. Fundamentally, I disagree. Leadership equals culture. Leaders are responsible for how the team dynamic and how the business performs. So anyway, that was the last time we worked together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with my travels in the crazy world of coaching, it often comes down to courage. Just having that courageousness to look in the mirror, to have someone around you they're gonna ask you tough questions. But as you say, with the grace of gifting an opportunity of learning for that person. And it's, I don't know whether it's a 1 in 20, 1 in 30 who are up to be courageous and bungee jump into coaching. But we all know those who get on the other side say, wow, I work with Kristina, I work with whoever. It was a transformative experience. Fascinating. Okay. Well, it's been great talking to you today, Kristina, and learning more about yoga. And I'm still keen to explore my yoga career, I guess. And I really am fascinated by how that'll help me in my lifestyle. And I really, really appreciate your time today. Always great to connect with you. And if those viewing this short interview today would like to connect with you, Kristina, how can they connect with you?
I'm mainly on Facebook and Instagram. So Kristina with a K, Kristina. And then the mouthful of a surname, Wischnowsky, which I think my handle's actually Wish Now, so which makes it a lot easier. You don't actually have to remember, just remember Wish Now, and you can find me. I teach yoga at Grassroots Yoga at the Tannery, and we're doing 2 weeks of online. So Chris, if you want to, you can jump on board. I'm teaching tonight, 7:00.
Right. There you go. I'll get my 3 and a 5-year-old on the yoga mat and in our lycra, and we'll be there.
You will love it. They will too.
Thanks, Kristina, so much for your time, and we'll catch up real soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.